Thank you, Sharon. My turn. Warm thank you for the invitation. In Europe, there's a lot of concern, of course, about the future of our alliance with the United States. We could say that seen from Brussels, the US has now become a normal country. Unfortunately, that's bad news, because we have an abnormal relationship with the United States, or as the British like to say, a special relationship. We are allies, we're still competitors, we are running for it, but we had a firm agreement that that competition will always take place within the bounds of legality. There would never be rivals that would use illegal, meat or hybrid attacks against each other. And then came the second Trump administration, which did exactly that. That's a rupture, and it's the first US administration since 1945 that sees Europe as a rival rather than as partners and allies. I think it's a structural change also. It's not just a rupture, because we now know that even if perhaps the US elects a president after Trump who really likes Europe and who we really like, the successor of the successor may once again be Trump-like. So from now on, whether the US sees us as an ally or as a rival depends on who wins the elections in the US, and that was never the case before. So I think this is a structural change, and that has serious consequences. The US government has outlined those consequences itself. Secretary Hexet came to Europe the first time in February of last year, and already then he said, you Europeans have to take ownership of your own conventional defense. And now we read also in the US National Defense Strategy, black on white, that the US will continue to provide extended nuclear deterrence, but that under the nuclear umbrella, Europeans have to fight a conventional battle themselves. That's very clear. It's not in and of itself illogical. I would say it is normal Europeans ought to be able to defend themselves, but the way it is now done risks to lead to a disorderly transition rather than to an organized change, because many of the statements of President Trump give the distinct impression that he is not ready to defend every ally in every scenario. So that rhetoric is a direct undermining of deterrence. So there is unrest, there is concern in Europe, and the debate has shifted to the idea that we should create within the NATO alliance a militarily autonomous European, so not EU, European meaning everybody else, including Canada and Turkey, except the United States. The European pillar, as I always say, will not have a logo, will not have a website. It's basically about capabilities. The way I see it, we need to revisit the NATO defense planning process. And currently, NATO aims to bring to the field one integrated set of forces, United States and the European combined. I think we need to plan for two sets of forces. One is the United States that has everything it needs and more, and the rest is everybody else. And the end state is that everybody else, that our combined forces, should be as complete as the American forces. Not necessarily as large as the area, because we have a different level of ambition. Europeans are not prepared to fight a war in Asia, but as complete with our own strategic enablers. Because now this is the problem. European armed forces have not been constructed to fight alone. They have been built to fight under American command, and American intelligence, American communications, American transport, air defense, deep strike, and so on and so forth. So the challenge for Europe is to acquire all of that ourselves. That's a question of money, but also of time, if you will have all the money. That debate has now been going on for a while. All individual European allies are increasing their national defense efforts, but we have still to make the big leap towards a collective effort to also get these strategic enablers that would provide us with real strategic autonomy within the NATO alliance. So I think it is clear that for us, Plan A remains to always have the United States on our side, but we must be realistic and also have a Plan B, or maybe Plan A minus the American. We have to know for ourselves how would we fight the war if the United States would not show up. This has further implications, not only for our relations with Russia and the Ukraine war. Ukraine has become close to a vital interest of Europe, precisely because it now has become a large-scale war of attrition. We have 1 million Ukrainians under arms. If they were defeated and Ukraine would be forced to surrender, those disappear from the military balance of power. We still have 1 million Russian in arms with a war economy. If they manage to defeat Ukraine, Vladimir Putin is unlikely to say, well done, congratulations, now you can all go home and enjoy a holiday. No, he's going to look for the next target. So we must stop Russian military expansionism today in Ukraine. There is great concern that the US government will drop Ukraine at one point or another, and therefore Europeans are determined to help Ukraine come what may, if necessary alone. Don't forget that the EU, the European Union, has made a crucial strategic decision in saying that the future of Ukraine is as a member of the EU. And this ought to be a very firm message to Russia. Do not think that our determination will falter, because we have just announced that Ukraine is now one of us. It will join the EU, so we can no longer afford to drop it. Eventually, negotiations will have to take place between Ukraine and Russia, supported by Europe and hopefully the US. And we hope that in those negotiations the US will be on the Ukrainian side to settle the war. Normalizing relations with Russia is something else altogether, because I do not think for a moment that even if there were a settlement for the war, that Russia would stop its hybrid actions against Ukraine and against ourselves. So that's a second, much longer-term perspective that will require a lot of trust, and that may require somebody else being the president of Russia. Then, of course, there are our relations with China. The Chinese position these days seems to be all is well. We have no direct geopolitical disputes, we trade and invest, we are friends, so there's nothing to discuss really, we'll just carry on as we are. The European response is all is not well. Yes, we are partners, there is a large economic relationship, but the status quo is not tenable because the economic relationship is entirely unbalanced. That's also our own fault that we got there, but we are here now. So the status quo is not level, the status quo is a very steep slope. If you want to keep standing on a very steep slope, you may manage for a while, but then you will begin to slide down. The European message to China is, if you continue to insist that there's not even a problem, let alone that you want to negotiate a better economic situation, then Europe will be provoked into taking protective measures to safeguard the industry that is still there. That would be a pity, I think, because otherwise, if we are able to overcome this economic difference, then partnership in other areas is possible. In the end, what is Europe's vital interest? We are an export economy with very few natural resources. Our vital interest can be summarized in one word: access. We need global access to markets and to supplies of natural resources. So our interest is that the world is not carved up in blocks and in great powers that need to have a own sphere of influence, but that all powers and all other spheres continue to operate within a single universal set of rules. Clearly, Japan and the Republic of Korea are partners for that project. The current US administration seems rather less enthusiastic about multilateralism and the rules-based order. And the Chinese government keeps announcing initiatives such as the Global Governance Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, and so on. But when you read them, are difficult to be against. They're also quite difficult to see what does it actually mean in concrete terms. So the conclusion is that for today, Europe, we're in a tricky position. We have a situation which the US, who used to be our committed ally, the current US president seems to be closer to the Chinese and the Russian presidents than to us. And there is a plausible scenario in which Russia, China, and the US all have good working relations, and Europe is the odd one out, and that's not something that we are used to. Thank you.